Kevin Spacey stepped onto the set of The View with a composure that felt deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if he were fully aware that every movement would be read for meaning. The applause that greeted him was polite but restrained, a careful sound rather than a warm one, and it lingered awkwardly before fading. He nodded to the audience, offering a small, practiced smile, then turned toward the table. Whoopi Goldberg greeted him with a neutral welcome, Sunny Hostin offered a brief nod, and Joy Behar leaned back slightly in her chair, arms crossed, watching him with an expression that mixed curiosity and challenge. From the moment he sat down, the atmosphere shifted. The usual casual chatter that opened the show felt absent, replaced by a tight focus that settled over the table. Joy opened the conversation, framing her first question as an invitation to reflect, but the edge beneath her tone was unmistakable. She spoke about public trust, about responsibility, about how audiences struggled to separate admiration for art from judgment of artists. Her words were measured, but they carried an implication that hovered just beneath the surface. Spacey listened without interruption, hands folded neatly in front of him, eyes steady. When he responded, his voice was calm, almost understated. He spoke about how complicated it was to live in a time when narratives formed faster than understanding, and how easy it was for nuance to be lost in the rush to judgment. He chose his words carefully, as if placing each one precisely where it belonged. Joy cut in before he finished his thought, suggesting that careful language could sometimes be used to avoid accountability. The interruption was sharp, practiced. A murmur rippled through the audience. Spacey paused, allowing the moment to settle, then turned his gaze back to Joy. He said he wasn't avoiding accountability, but that accountability required clarity, not assumptions. He added that conversations collapsed when people decided the outcome before hearing the evidence. Joy smiled thinly and pressed harder. She argued that powerful figures often benefited from systems designed to protect them, that eloquence could function as a shield. The table leaned into the tension. Sunny glanced between them, sensing escalation, while Whoopi remained still, letting the exchange play out. Spacey leaned forward slightly, his posture changing just enough to signal engagement rather than retreat. He said power wasn't the issue being discussed, process was. He spoke about the importance of distinguishing between accusation and conclusion, about how collapsing that distinction harmed not just individuals, but the integrity of public discourse. His voice remained even, but there was a firmness to it now, a precision that sharpened each sentence. Joy scoffed softly, accusing him of hiding behind technicalities. That was when the energy in the room shifted. Spacey didn't bristle, he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he allowed a brief silence to stretch before responding. He said certainty without evidence wasn't justice, it was performance. The word hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. A collective intake of breath rippled through the audience, followed by scattered applause that grew louder as the line sank in. Joy attempted to interject, but Spacey continued, not over her, but through her resistance. He spoke about how public conversations had become addicted to moral theater, where humiliation was mistaken for righteousness. He said that when people refused complexity, they weren't protecting truth, they were simplifying it into something easier to cheer or boo. The audience shifted audibly now, reacting not just to what was being said, but how it was being said. Spacey's tone never wavered, and that steadiness seemed to amplify his words. Joy tried again to cut in, but this time Spacey raised a hand slightly, not dismissive, but firm, and finished his thought. He said listening was not endorsement, and understanding was not excusing. He added that shutting down nuance didn't make a conversation moral, it made it shallow. For the first time, Joy looked visibly unsettled. She leaned back, lips pressed together, then leaned forward again, accusing him of lecturing the panel. Spacey met her gaze and replied that disagreement wasn't disrespect, and that challenging a premise wasn't the same as deflecting responsibility. The audience applauded more confidently now, sensing a clear reversal of the usual dynamic. Joy's next remark was sharper, tinged with sarcasm. She suggested that viewers weren't interested in philosophy when real harm was at stake. Spacey nodded once and said real harm deserved real care, not slogans. He argued that rushing to moral certainty might feel satisfying, but it often left truth behind. His words landed with weight, each sentence building on the last, methodical and relentless without ever tipping into aggression. The tension at the table was palpable. Sunny remained quiet, watching closely. Whoopi shifted slightly, her expression thoughtful, aware that the exchange was moving beyond the show's usual boundaries. Joy attempted to reassert control, reframing her argument, but her rhythm was off now. Each time she spoke, Spacey responded with clarity that reframed her point rather than reacting to it. When the show returned from commercial, the atmosphere felt noticeably altered, as if the studio itself were holding its breath. The audience applause was hesitant, uncertain of the emotional footing they were supposed to land on. Joy Behar sat upright now, her posture tighter than before, her expression sharpened into something defensive. Kevin Spacey, by contrast, appeared unchanged, hands folded, gaze steady, his composure suggesting he was prepared for whatever came next. Joy opened immediately, her voice brisk, attempting to reclaim the narrative. She said she wanted to be clear that tough questions weren't personal attacks, that public figures had a responsibility to face uncomfortable scrutiny. The phrasing was firm, but there was an undercurrent of justification running through it. Spacey listened without interrupting, his eyes fixed on her, his stillness almost amplifying the tension. When he responded, he did so slowly, deliberately. He said scrutiny was necessary, but that scrutiny lost its value when it became selective or performative. He spoke about how easily conversations collapsed into spectacle, where the goal shifted from understanding to domination. The audience grew quiet again, sensing that the exchange was moving into deeper territory rather than cooling down. Joy bristled at the word, performative. She accused him of reframing the conversation to suit himself, of positioning himself as a victim of discourse rather than engaging with the substance of criticism. Her tone rose slightly, sharper than before. Spacey nodded once, then replied that critique required consistency. He said it was easy to sound righteous when the rules applied only one way. The words landed hard. A few audience members clapped instinctively, then stopped, unsure whether to continue. Spacey went on, explaining that moral certainty felt comforting on television because it fit neatly into time slots and soundbites. Truth, he said, was messier. It didn't resolve itself in applause breaks. It demanded patience, something modern media rarely allowed. Joy tried to interrupt, but Spacey continued, his voice calm but unyielding. He said public shaming had become a substitute for justice, a shortcut that felt productive without doing the work of fairness. He looked directly at her as he spoke, not accusing, but unwavering. The silence around them was heavy, dense with attention. Whoopi shifted forward, preparing to step in, but Joy raised a hand slightly, signaling she wasn't done. She fired back that fairness couldn't come at the expense of accountability, that too much patience often protected the powerful. Spacey agreed with her, then pivoted. He said accountability without evidence was not accountability at all, it was assumption dressed up as virtue. The distinction, he argued, mattered more than ever. That was the moment the balance tipped fully. Joy's response came faster now, less measured. She accused him of intellectualizing pain, of turning lived harm into a debate exercise. Spacey didn't flinch. He said acknowledging harm didn't require abandoning principles. He said justice that ignored process eventually devoured itself. The audience reaction was unmistakable now, applause, sustained and confident. Joy paused, clearly frustrated, her usual rhythm broken. She attempted to pivot again, but her words stumbled, circling points Spacey had already dismantled. Each response he offered was concise, controlled, and framed in a way that exposed the gaps in her argument without attacking her personally. Sunny Hostin glanced toward Whoopi, silently signaling concern about the escalating tension. Whoopi finally interjected, reminding everyone that the show thrived on differing perspectives and urging calm. Spacey nodded respectfully, acknowledging her point, but Joy appeared visibly irritated, her patience thinning. Spacey used the opening to conclude his thoughts. He said he hadn't come to television to rehabilitate an image or seek approval. He said he came because he believed conversations mattered, but only if they were rooted in fairness rather than spectacle. He warned that when dialogue became about humiliation, everyone lost credibility. Joy attempted one last rebuttal, but it lacked force. Her words felt defensive rather than assertive, and the audience sensed it. Spacey thanked the hosts for allowing him to speak, his tone courteous, almost formal. He didn't linger. He simply leaned back, signaling he was finished. The camera pulled out to a wide shot of the table, revealing a panel visibly unsettled. Joy forced a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Whoopi nodded thoughtfully. The audience applause carried through the end of the segment, not explosive, but steady, an acknowledgement of something unexpected having occurred. When the episode ended, the tension didn't dissipate. Staff members moved quietly, avoiding eye contact. Backstage, producers replayed the exchange in hushed conversations, aware that the moment would dominate headlines by evening. Clips were already spreading online, framed in dramatic language, dissected line by line.